Hi, Purple Jan here. Welcome to my channel, Tales from a Broken Brain. If you've not been here before, this is just a little snippets of my life living with my 4 dogs and some quite severe brain damage, but I muddle through as best I can. And it's the 3rd of December, sorry I'm not comfy yet, 3rd of December today, 2021. And everybody else is doing Vlogmas, and I was thinking I'd really like to get involved in doing that, but it seems to be focused all around Christmas and I don't really do Christmas. So I thought, well, perhaps I'm just going to try and upload some content anyway. But I thought, as I am sort of, oh, I've lost my words now. As I am trying to sort of do a Vlogmasy thing, I thought instead of talking about what I'm doing for Christmas this year, I'd take you back a long way to Christmas when I was a little girl, because it was such a joyous, wonderful time when I was little. And I'm talking, my memories probably go from 3 to 7. It's that sort of 4 years that I'm really focusing on. And Christmas nowadays for children of that age seems to be so very different. So I thought I'd just give you a peep at how I remember it. And you know, I'm not that old now. Well, I don't think I'm that old, but for anybody under 40 I'm probably completely ancient. But newsflash to any of you who are under 40, the older you get, you don't actually feel it. You might feel it in your body, but inside you don't change. You're just the same inside and you feel just the same. So anyway, my memories of Christmas when I was a small child, or in fact one of my first memories, go back to, I couldn't have been much more than 3. At that time we used to have, my mum used to bring or Santa Claus used to bring our smaller toys and fill a pillowcase that was left on the bottom of the bed. Well, not fill it, but put them in it. I think Mum gave up on stockings because they were just too awkward to find the little things to fit inside. So then we would have a big present downstairs under the tree. And this particular Christmas, and as I say, I must have been about 3. I couldn't have been much more than that. I went downstairs very early in the morning. The whole house was quiet and I managed to get myself downstairs. There wasn't any stair gates in those days. You could either do stairs or you couldn't. And went into the living room where the Christmas tree was, and there was a high chair for my big baby doll. Now my big baby doll was probably the size of about a 3-month-old baby, so it was just to give you a general idea of the size of it. So there was this high chair for my baby doll, and I was so excited that I thought I have to show Mum and Dad, because obviously they wouldn't know that Santa had left me this. And so then I decided to take this high chair upstairs, and it must have been nearly as tall as I was. And I just, even now, all these years later, I remember the Herculean effort it took to drag this thing up the stairs after me, and really must have been quite dangerous. And how I didn't wake up everybody. I mean, I must have woken everybody up, because it was thumping up and down up the stairs, and eventually I drag it into my mum and dad's room, and it's like, look what Santa left me. And they were so surprised and said, oh, aren't you lucky? So that was a wonderful thing. And then later on, after I started school, Christmas didn't start sort of straight after Halloween the way it seems to do nowadays. It was a slow run up to Christmas, and you know, we would start off by obviously we'd start preparing for the nativity play, and we'd learn the story of the nativity, and we'd learn carols. We used to have, in those days, sorry, it's the puppy asking to go out, should be a second. She's just been out actually, so she'll be fine. In those days we had a Christian religious assembly every morning. So every morning we had prayers and hymns. It was just an ordinary state school. It wasn't a religious school as such, but that was standard. and so we'd start singing carols and learning the carols, you know, and I loved that, you know, that feel of the slow build up towards Christmas. And then later on, you know, there would probably be, I don't have any real clear memories of it, but probably a Christmas tree would appear at school at some stage. But then, you know, as we got closer and closer to Christmas, still no decorations at home or anything, but we'd start to make decorations at school. We used to make paper chains, and I remember being so delighted every year when we used to make lanterns with coloured cellophane and cardboard and bits of paper. And I mean, they obviously didn't put candles in or lights of any sort, but they were just decorative lanterns that would hang up. And I remember the blues and the reds and the purples from these cellophane. It was just so pretty. And then at home, as I say, decorations didn't go up anywhere near as early as they do now. It would literally be just a few days before Christmas we'd start decorating. I mean, Mum used to tell tales of when she was a little girl, decorations wouldn't go up until Christmas Eve. That was it. Christmas Eve, they would start putting the decorations up, and then that would be Christmas begun officially. Sorry, I could hear her chewing on something. I wanted to make sure it was something legal that she had. So our decorations would go up 3 or 4 days before Christmas, and the house would all of a sudden become magical. I mean, they weren't even the decorations that we have these days that are actually really nice decorations. They were, I seem to remember the first artificial tree was a bit of wire and tinsel, and it was just nothing like a real tree, although we used to have real trees before that. So I don't know at what point Mum and Dad decided to go real, but I know they used to get really cross when it started dropping pine needles, so perhaps that's why we got the real one. And you get carol singers as well. People would come round, mainly children, but normally they'd have an adult with them, and you know, they'd come round and they'd sing carols at your doorstep, and you give them some money. I mean, you know, the days when you'd invite them in for a mince pie and a drink of Christmas cheer weren't, well, that wasn't happening when I was little, but you know, you would have the carolers, and you know, the shops would start to play more carols when I was younger, but then as I got older, they turned more into Christmas songs rather than religious music. And it was just this very slow build up towards Christmas that I remember so much. And, you know, just being... Oh, and also before I went to school, it must have been, or maybe just after, you would have work Christmas parties. I don't even know if they do them anymore for children, but you know, every firm seemed to have a works Christmas party. Now, we didn't get one at Dad's firm because he worked in London, and so he commuted every day, so there wasn't anything local from a Dad's company that all of the children could go to. But my mum worked at the local dairy in the office, so we would go to that one, and that would be a big hall full of assorted children that you didn't know. And to be quite honest, it was a bit uncomfortable for me. I don't like, or at that point I didn't like going into a room full of people that I didn't know. And you'd have a tea, you know, they'd make you there'd be food, there'd be a Father Christmas that you would go and talk to and sit on his knee and tell him what you wanted for Christmas. But again, not like nowadays where they actually look as though they could possibly be Father Christmas. In those days, it was just a bloke with a cotton wool beard and a tatty old red outfit on. I mean, it had already gone over to red, you know, I'm not so old that I remember them in green. But it was clearly not Father Christmas, and it always felt... You just entered into the spirit of it, you know, you just pretend it was, even though you knew it wasn't, no matter what sort of age you were. And we'd also be taken to see Father Christmas, I think it was usually in the cart we went to. They would have a grotto, which again, nothing like today's grottos, you know. And you would go in again, see Father Christmas, sit on his knee, tell him you'd been a good girl, whether you had or you hadn't. And and you'd be given a cheap rubbish present. I mean, it wasn't anything. But then at home on Christmas Day, we didn't have the absolute festive presents that we have nowadays. We used to, the pillowcase on the bed, you know, there would be the same standard presents that Mum would give us right up until we left home, really, where I was trying to think what we would get right up until it kind of went from a Christmas annual every year, where you'd have whatever comic it was that you liked, they would do an annual. And so there'd be an annual, I don't know, in those days we may have had a Cadbury selection box, or that may have come from aunties and uncles, but I seem to remember Cadbury selection boxes featuring quite well. You know, various aunts and uncles would send presents, but they'd be under the tree downstairs. And there'd be just like smaller things. And I have a memory of things like flannels. I know that I always, for my children, always wrapped up a new flannel and a toothbrush and things that they were going to need anyway, but I would buy them and wrap them up, and that would be an extra something to unwrap. But then, you know, Christmas presents that I really remember would be, well, the doll's high chair, because that was just such a big thing. I think one year we had doll's prams, beautiful Silver Cross coach-built doll's prams, and that might have been before I got the high chair, because I was so little that I used to push it down to the shops, but then I'd be too tired to walk back, so Mum would put me in the doll's pram and push me back in the doll's pram, because they were big Silver Cross coach-built doll's prams, absolutely stunning, and they would be worth probably a bit of money today. But as soon as Dad decided we were old enough, or I was old enough, mine got given to the boys over the road when I was on a stay at my nana's house, and they wanted to make a go-kart, and he said, well, have the pram and use the wheels from that. So that was the end of my doll's pram, and I've, to be honest, never forgiven Dad for doing that. You know, that would have been nice to hand on to my daughter, but he was very much one for moving things out. He didn't like clutter in any way. In fact, Boxing Day, we would always have to sort out our old toys, because we got a whole load of new, well, as I say, not as many toys as kids get these days, but we'd have new toys, and that meant that we had to get rid of old toys. So we had to pick out a load of old toys, and you'd take them to the children's ward at the local hospital. And I mean, I don't think we even had charity shops in those days. I mean, we're talking sort of late 60s, really. No, even early 60s, thinking about it. Yeah, I was born in 58, so it would be early 60s that sort of thing was going on. And I don't believe that there were charity shops until, maybe not until the 80s, but maybe you can comment below if you remember when the charity shops started arriving. Before charity shops, you would just, anything you didn't want, you'd either give away to somebody you knew, or it would go to the jumble sale. There was always a church jumble sale, or a Scouts jumble sale, or a school jumble sale. There would always be jumble sales going on, and you would just literally give everything away. And then people would be able to go in and buy it literally for pennies. In fact, right into adulthood, when I was working at the airport, I remember going to the jumble sale or to a jumble sale and buying a beautiful wool coat that I paid 5p for, and walked into work the next day, and everyone's, you know, oh, where did you get that from? It's like 5p at a jumble sale. So yeah, so then Christmas Day wasn't the gluttony that we seem to do as much, or perhaps not everybody does it, but maybe it's just people that I know. It's not this massive food. It was, you wake up in the morning, and Dad would make porridge on Christmas morning, and that was unheard of in my later Christmases, because you knew you were going to have so much for dinner that you didn't really want a proper breakfast, as it were. So Dad would do porridge for breakfast, and then Christmas dinner, my mum and Dad always did a roast dinner on a Sunday, and Christmas dinner would be on the table at 1 o'clock. I don't know if it's because they're both ex-forces, but they were both in the Air Force during the war, but Christmas dinner would be 1 o'clock on the table. If we had it at our house, there were Christmases when we went up to my nana's house in London, and although I don't really remember those so much, the only thing that I'm trying to remember whether it was Nana's house or we went to my mum's sister one year. And there was one year when we got typewriters. My sister and I got, not the petite typewriters that the other little girls seemed to be getting, but they were like metal, and you had a dial and you twisted it round to the letter that you wanted, and then you pressed a bar in it. So it would actually type, but not with a QWERTY type keyboard. And we both had one of those, and we'd taken them with us on the journey up to either my nan's house or my auntie's. I can't remember which it was. But on the way back, my sister was horribly car sick, all over her typewriter, which was on her lap. And she was so upset, they gave her mine. That tended to be a common theme in childhood, that things were taken away from me. And I think it was a case of, well, you have to share it after that. But, you know, there'd been so much vomit in hers that I think that probably just went in the bin. But sorry about that if you're eating. That was just a memory that popped up there. And then Christmas dinner would be, we'd have turkey, and the bacon would go over the turkey. So we didn't do these pigs in blankets that you have nowadays. The bacon would go over the turkey, chipolata sausages around the turkey, and then, you know, a range of vegetables, always sprouts, always roast potatoes. There'd be stuffing and there'd be bread sauce. And you would feel very full at the end of the meal, but not stuffed in the way that we're, like I say, here I'm talking from my personal experience. You may be completely different and be much more sensible about it, but we would be able to eat our Christmas dinner and then have Christmas pudding afterwards as part of the same meal. Whereas later on, when I started doing Christmas dinners, pudding became a separate meal. We would have our Christmas dinner, and then we'd open presents, and then an hour or two later, when you got a bit of room, it would be a case of anybody want any pudding. And so that's kind of carried on even to Sunday dinners nowadays. We never have pudding as part of the same meal. We always seem to have it a couple of hours later, or as a completely separate meal. But anyway, that's by the by. So, and then, you know, again, we'd have our, I don't think the presents thing, I think when we were little we had presents in the morning, but at some point during the history of my Christmases, presents moved to after dinner. And then when I was doing Christmas myself, presents moved to literally after dinner but before pudding. I don't know how that happened, but it did at some point. So I don't really remember completely, but you know, we and then in the evening we would have tea. We would have sandwiches and Christmas cake. So we'd still have 3 meals. So the whole grazing all day long on all sorts of chocolates and all the things that we've done since I left home, and like I say, it may be just me and the people that I know, but you tend to have this huge gluttony thing going on, and that didn't happen back when I was little. But then we were all thinner in those days. You know, right up until I was an older teenager, you couldn't get larger size clothes in any shops. The biggest size that you could get was perhaps a 16. That's UK sizes. And so if you were any fatter than that, then you had to make your own, you know. And we just didn't have people the size that I am now, or we just didn't have the people that big when I was younger. And if there was a really fat person, then, you know, they would be out of the ordinary, not commonplace like they are now. And so I can only think it's because we just had smaller meals and ate more sensibly. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I remember from Christmas when I was little. only really that you put up the decorations just a day or two before Christmas, and then they would all come down on 12th night. Later on, I developed a tradition with my family that part of the decorations on the tree were the chocolate decorations, and they were never to be touched. They would go on the tree when the tree went up, and then nobody was allowed to eat them. But as the tree came down on 12th night, that's when you had all the chocolates. And so it was one little last thing to look forward to as the last bit of Christmas. But anyway, I just wanted to do a short video of a little bit of waffle and recollection of my Christmas as a childhood. I've probably forgotten most of it and haven't mentioned any of it, but I hope you've enjoyed that little walk down memory lane with me, and hope you have a good day, and hope you've got something nice in your calendar, especially in your advent calendars. I don't have one anymore, but especially the ones with the little boxes that open up and there's something inside instead of just a little picture of a Christmas pudding or a robin that we had when I was a little girl. But anyway, I'll say bye for now. Okay, bye.